Welcome back to another deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. Usually, we look at the people who start in an organization. The heroes, the martyrs, the ones who get their pictures on the wall.
Right. The success stories.
But today, we are looking at the people who walked out the back door. And I don't mean just casual members. I mean the architects.
It's a fascinating pivot, isn't it? Because every organization has that VIP list, the inner circle.
Exactly.
And in this case, we're talking about the Baha'i administration's absolute elite. These were the personal secretaries, the official historians, the top-tier missionaries.
The people who knew where the bodies were buried because, well, in some cases, they were holding the shovel.
That's a good way to put it. And we should be clear here. We've both been on the inside. We know the official line.
Oh, yeah. Anyone who leaves is spiritually diseased.
Or they just couldn't handle the standards. It's always something like, oh, they wanted to drink wine, or they had an ego problem.
A very convenient way to just dismiss any real criticism.
But the accounts we're looking at today from these 9 individuals, they paint a very different picture. They didn't leave to go party. They left because they saw things at the very top that completely contradicted the public marketing.
And they wrote books about it.
Books that are, let's be honest, nearly impossible to find if you stay within the approved circles.
So let's crack this open. We're going to look at these 9 in, let's say, 3 groups. First up, the inner circle. The ones who knew way too much.
And you really can't get much higher up in that circle than Abdu'l-Hossein Ayati.
This guy wasn't just a member. He was a celebrity in the community.
Oh, absolutely. He was given the title Avara the Wanderer.
By Abdul-Baha himself.
By Abdul-Baha himself. He was considered an apostle of Baha'u'llah. I mean, he was the man commissioned to write the Kawakid al-Durya, which for a long time was the definitive history of the movement.
So just imagine that. You're the guy hired to write the official history, you're getting awards from the leader, and then you turn around and say...
Actually, a lot of what I wrote was basically fake news.
That's exactly what happened. Ayati left and returned to Islam, but he didn't go quietly. He published a book called Kashf al-Hiyal.
Exposing the tricks.
Love that title.
It's perfect. And his critique was so devastating because it was specific. He admitted that while he was writing the official history, he was under immense pressure to, well, scrub the record.
Scrub it how? What was he hiding?
Mostly the Babi period. The early history was, violent. It was full of insurrections, political assassination attempts. Not a good look.
Not very world peace.
Not at all. Ayati said he was told to sanitize all of it, to make the movement look purely pacifist from day one. He basically revealed that the infallible guidance was really just a very careful PR strategy.
That is a massive blow to credibility. If your own historian admits the official history is a fabrication, where does that leave your theology?
It leaves it on very shaky ground. And he wasn't the only one in that room.
Which brings us to Fazlullah Mohtadi Sobhi. Sobhi, the secretary. Now, this one, I think, hits even harder because it's so personal. Ayati was a scholar, but Sobhi was the guy living in the house.
Correct. For 10 years, Sobhi was the personal secretary to Abdu'l-Baha. He lived in the household in Haifa. He was taking dictation, processing mail. He saw the family dynamics up close.
And you'd think that being that close to a supposed holy figure would, increase your faith.
You would think. But for Sobhi, it did the exact opposite.
It shattered it.
Completely. In his memoirs, he describes this profound disillusionment. He said he didn't see a divine court. He saw a royal court, rife with nepotism, jealousy, and what he called moral corruption. He was especially critical of the power transfer to Shoghi Effendi.
Right, that transition is always a huge sticking point. Sobhi basically said the authority the Guardian claimed wasn't spiritual at all, it was just a power grab.
He saw the machinery behind the holiness, how letters were written to manipulate people, how money was managed, how the family acted behind closed doors. And when he left in 1928, he did something really interesting.
He got a normal job.
He got a job at the Ministry of Culture.
Which sounds so mundane, but it's a huge statement.
It is. He proved you could leave the Ark of Salvation and not drown. In fact, you could have a perfectly normal, successful life. But, of course, the administration never forgave him. He was harassed relentlessly.
Well, a former secretary is a dangerous man. He knows where all the skeletons are.
Exactly. And speaking of dangerous, let's talk about our third guy from the inner circle, Haj Mirza Hassan Nikou.
Nikou, the sledgehammer of logic.
That's a perfect description. Nikou wasn't emotional. He was just cold, hard, analytical. He wrote this massive 4-volume series, Falsafeye Nikou.
And this wasn't a tell-all memoir.
No, not at all. It was a systematic deconstruction of the theology itself. He wasn't saying people were mean to me. He was saying your foundational texts are contradictory.
What was his main line of attack?
He focused on the administrative order. He argued that the will and testament of Abdu'l-Baha, the very document that created the guardianship and the universal house of justice,
The bedrock of the modern organization.
yes. He argued it created a system that was logically inconsistent with Baha'u'llah's earlier writings. He basically said the organization had become rootless.
Rootless, that's a powerful word. Meaning it just sort of disconnected from its own principles to survive as an institution.
Precisely. The bureaucracy had eaten the spirituality, and he used their own texts to prove it. So when you have the historian, the secretary, and the logician all leaving around the same time,
In the late 1920s, yeah.
it suggests a systemic failure, not just a few people having a spiritual struggle.
It suggests the curtain was pulled back and the people in the front row did not like what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
But this takes us to our next group, because these guys didn't just see internal problems, they saw external betrayal. The colonial whistleblowers.
And this is where you have to understand the geopolitics of Iran at the time, early 20th century. You've got Britain and Russia constantly meddling, Iranian nationalism is surging.
And people were extremely sensitive to any hint of foreign influence.
Absolutely. And what's the Baha'i administration's favorite line? We are non-political.
Loyal to the government of the land.
That's the one. But Mirza Saleh Eghtesad Baregheye, he wasn't buying it. And this guy was a high-level missionary. His job was to sell the faith.
And instead, he wrote a book called Ighaz Awakening.
In it, he argued the administration was basically a proxy for colonial interests.
That's a heavy charge. Was he just being paranoid?
Well, he laid out his case. He pointed to the organization's total lack of patriotism. He felt its globalist agenda was actually a tool to weaken Iranian national identity, which just so happened to serve British and Russian interests.
So preaching world citizenship sounds lovely on a poster.
Right.
But in the context of a country fighting off colonizers, it starts to look a lot like treason.
Precisely. And this was backed up by Masihullah Rahmani, another missionary, this time in Khorasan. He wrote Rahe Rast, The Straight Path.
And he took it even further.
He did. He analyzed the financial and administrative ties. He basically said the leadership in Haifa was way too cozy with the British mandate authorities in Palestine.
Which, to be fair, is a matter of historical record. Abdu'l-Baha was literally knighted by the British Empire.
Exactly. And for a nationalist Iranian like Rahmani, that wasn't a badge of honor, it was a badge of servitude. He just couldn't square the claim of divine independence with the reality of being a protected client of the British.
Then you have Aman Shafa, who wrote Letter from San Palo.
Shafa's critique was more about the bait and switch. He focused on the marketing.
The shiny brochures.
The shiny brochures, yeah. All the talk of peace, equality, unity of science and religion. He said the true face of the organization was autocratic and politically manipulative. He put it perfectly. We are selling a Mercedes, but under the hood, it's a broken bicycle provided by foreign powers.
It's so interesting that all three of these guys were missionaries. They were the salesmen.
It's what makes their defections so damaging. They knew the product was defective because they were the ones trying to move it. They realized their spiritual work was actually political subversion.
Okay, so we have the intellectual deconstruction and the political awakening. But I want to shift gears because, for me, this next group, this is where the story stops being about ideas and starts being about human cruelty.
Human cost, yes.
Yeah.
This is where the mask of love and unity really slips off.
Let's start with Adib Masoudi.
Masoudi's story is just, it's heartbreaking. He was a poet, a brilliant literary mind, and a missionary for 35 years. He gave his entire adult life to this organization.
And then in 1959, tragedy.
Unspeakable tragedy. His 2 sons and his daughter were brutally murdered.
By Savak, the Shah's secret police.
Yes, a political killing, a complete horror. Now, in any normal, healthy community, if a pillar of that community loses 3 children...
The community rallies around him, they support him.
Of course. But what happened to Masoudi?
A cold shoulder.
A cold shoulder. The administration's response was just bureaucratic, distant. He realized all the talk of oneness was completely hollow when it came to actual human suffering that didn't serve a PR purpose. So he started to voice his disillusionment.
And how did the infallible House of Justice respond to a grieving father?
They expelled him. In 1976, they excommunicated him. A man who had served for 35 years, who had lost his children, was cast out because he dared to say, this community doesn't actually care about people.
It is just. It's monstrous.
It's institutional narcissism. If you aren't useful to the narrative, you are discarded. Masoudi spent his last years writing poetry in praise of the Shia Imams. He had to leave the Baha'i administration to find any kind of spiritual solace.
And then there's Mrs. Ghods Iran. Her name alone is incredible.
It implies a kind of sacredness, and her background. Her father was Abu Karim Kayat, the personal servant to Baha'u'llah himself.
We're talking about the man who washed the founder's clothes and cooked his food.
You cannot get any closer to the source than that. In Baha'i genealogy, she is basically royalty.
And she walked away?
She walked away. And she wrote Baregheye Rahmat, the Spark of Mercy. Her story is so important because of the immense social price she paid. She had to leave her husband, her parents, her entire world.
I just want to pause on that. For a woman in that culture, in that time, to leave her husband and her famous family, that's the nuclear option.
It is, which tells you how strong her conviction must have been. She described seeing the hypocrisy of the Holy Family from the inside. She realized the sanctity she was raised to revere was a performance. She went back to Islam, not because it was easy, it was incredibly difficult, but because she couldn't live the lie anymore.
It just completely dismantles that argument that people leave because they don't understand the station of the founder.
She understood it better than anyone. She saw the man behind the curtain and realized he was just a man.
And that brings us to the modern era with Manaz Rofi. Because the apologists always say, oh, those stories are from the 1920s. We've changed.
And then along comes Manaz Rofi, also known as Raha.
Her book, Sayeye Shoum, The Ominous Shadow, was a massive bestseller in Iran. Printed, what, 10 times?
At least. And this isn't ancient history. She grew up in a strict Baha'i family in Sanandaj. Her critique is about the mechanisms of control.
The shunning, the social death sentence.
Yes. She exposes how the organization uses family as leverage. If you question authority, you lose your mother, your father, your siblings. She called it an ominous shadow because even when you're free, you're constantly looking over your shoulder, haunted by what you lost.
It's the psychology of a totalist system, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unity is very easy to achieve when you just kick out everyone who disagrees.
That is her entire point. The Baha'i concept of unity is actually uniformity, and it's enforced by coercion. She blew a whistle on the idea of independent investigation of truth.
A total sham.
It's a sham. You're only allowed to investigate until you reach the pre-approved conclusion.
So let's just look at this lineup again. We have the historian who admitted he faked the history, the secretary who saw the moral rot, the logician who took apart the leadership structure,
the missionaries who exposed the colonial politics, the poet who was abandoned in his grief, the servant's daughter who chose truth over royalty, and the modern critic who exposed the cult-like control.
It's a damning mosaic. When you put all these pieces together, you don't see a perfect administration dealing with a few bad apples. You see a systemic pattern of deception, political maneuvering, and psychological abuse.
And the common thread through all of it, every single one of them was a VIP. These were the insiders, the ones who were supposed to know better.
The ones who were upholding the system until they couldn't anymore.
And that's why the administration works so hard to bury these names in these books. You are not going to find Kashf or Sayeye Shoum in your local Baha'i library. They are terrified of these accounts.
Because these are the receipts.
Yeah.
This is the eyewitness testimony from inside the house.
Exactly. It's easy to dismiss some critic on the outside. It's a lot harder to dismiss the man who wrote your own history book.
So I think the takeaway for anyone listening is this. If you're in the organization, or even if you're just curious about it, ask yourself one question.
Why are these voices silenced?
Right. If the truth is so powerful, why can't it withstand the testimony of its own former leaders?
These cracks in the covenant aren't just hairline fractures, they're structural failures. And these 9 people had the courage to point them out. And they paid for it with their reputations, their families, everything.
They refused to be part of the silent VIP club. And maybe their stories are worth a read.
Indeed. The truth is usually found in the books they tell you not to open.
That's all for this deep dive. Keep your eyes open and don't be afraid to read the forbidden texts. We'll see you next time.